Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the James Beard Foundation, thank you for joining us. I'm Anna Magnuson, Manager of Industry Support. This is our final session of our Winter Wellness Series, Bringing It Home, How to Implement Wellness Practices into Your Restaurant. From the mental to physical, this virtual series aims to combat the various forms of industry burnout and prioritize your well-being. Our moderator today is Anne McBride, Vice President of Programs at JBF, and I'll pass it over to her in a minute, but I'm going to first introduce our panelists today. First, we have Katie Button, chef and co-founder of Curate, a collection of restaurants, online marketplace, wine club, and culinary journeys designed to connect people with the Spanish experience and lifestyle. Among her many accolades, her restaurant has been named one of the 40 most important restaurants of the past 40 years by Food and Wine, and most important of the decade by Esquire. In 2022, she won the James Beard Foundation for Outstanding Hospitality Award. And next, we are joined by Chef Brother Luck, a James Beard nominee, and a fan favorite on shows like Top Chef, Chopped, and Beat Bobby Flay. A passionate restaurant owner in Colorado Springs, Brother Luck thrives on mentorship and creating a safe place for mental health discussions. And he will be discussing his personal journey in an upcoming memoir. Our third and final panelist is Fiore Tedesco, chef and co-owner of Locadoro, the forthcoming Bambino in Austin. Tedesco, along with Adam Orman, co-founded Good Work Austin, advocating for workers' rights and supporting local businesses. Tedesco's culinary prowess has earned him numerous accolades, reflecting in his commitment to community service, fresh ingredients, and excellence in both fine dining and casual fare. And I'm just going to quickly go over and mention that this recording will be posted to our virtual education library after this is finished, and we will post a link for that in the chat and also follow up with the link to the recording to all registrants. We'll leave about 10 minutes for questions at the end of the session, but please feel free to use the Q&A box throughout, and we'll try to get to your questions in the end. And if you're having any technical difficulties, please put it in the chat and we will do our best to help you out. So I'm going to now pass it over to Anne to get started. And thank you all for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna. If you want to put it back just on the slide with our chef social, just as we get started, that way people can capture that if you want to follow anybody on social media. Thank you, Chef, so much for joining us today. I'm so thrilled to be talking to you about wellness in your restaurants as this conclusion of the series, as Anna mentioned. So we've talked about things like mental health, the physical aspect of it, because this industry is so brutal on our bodies, right? The importance of stretching, how to use herbs and herbalism to support yourself, and how to feed yourself figuratively and literally. So I'd love to start by asking, what are your wellness practices? How do you take care of yourselves? Fiore, you're off mute if you want to go first.
Great. I would start by saying I meditate. I've been practicing transcendental meditation for almost 25 years. It is the way and the place that I keep myself sort of grounded, connected, and present more present for experiences for the rest of my waking day. I do find like I was once a teaching professional tennis player. I went to college thinking I was going to play tennis for a living, and that wasn't close to being true. I still played. I still play tennis, and it's my way to like connect physically with the world. Not as much as I used to, and I do find it like a real challenge physically to stay active enough to sort of combat or help deal with the incoming stimuli and stresses that this world and this job has to throw at us. That's a good question.
Katie, what about you?
Well, I feel like it took me a while. I think consistent exercise has been the biggest change I've implemented in my life in the past year and a half. And I have failed at exercising for a really, really long, for about, 41, about 41 years. Yeah. And I think I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, what can I fit in with time, but also what am I going to keep coming back for? And I go to my dad's apartment and row on his rowing machine, and it is amazing on multiple levels. One, it's connection. I get to connect with my dad. I didn't realize that also human connection, like talking with people, seeing them consistently, like not being on your own is also a really important part of wellness. And it takes me 20 minutes, instead of trying to do, I think I was like trying to go to classes at the gym, and it was like a 45-minute commitment, and, just trying to do too much. And so I could never get it fit in. But this combination of like having coffee with my dad, working out for 20 minutes has got me, it's like something that fits, and I feel so great. And the other things I think I've been thinking about and working on is obviously sleep. It's everything everybody says, sleep and eating and drinking less alcohol overall, which is really important. So all of those things together, but it was finding that like consistent exercise I could do. It doesn't cost me anything. It's like, it just fits in with my time and space and gives me that connection with my dad. That's great.
Love that. What about you, brother?
Well, I think the most important piece when it comes to kind of taking care of ourselves is we really have to focus on scheduling our time. We go through our entire adolescence on a very rigorous schedule of wake up, get to the bus at this time, recess, lunch, get out of school, do your homework, go play, have dinner, go to bed. But I think as soon as we get into the work field, we kind of forget that. We only focus on our work schedule. So for me personally, I'm very, very strict about my time, personal and professional, and I use my calendar to control that. So I can schedule in the personal time that I need of, Sunday nights, I'm going to go bowling with my wife. And like, that's our time to disconnect with no phones. And, when am I going to go actually work out and get on the treadmill and start doing my weights? Like, I have to be very vigorous about controlling my schedule. So I think that's the most important part. And I totally agree with the alcohol piece. I mean, that just, especially for us in the restaurant industry, it gets to a point where you don't realize how much you're actually consuming and how much of a toll it's taken on your body physically, mentally, and spiritually. So I think that's a big piece as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously we're not just talking about excessive alcohol drinking. We're just talking about like that glass of wine every night or something like that with a meal. That adds up in terms of the toll it takes on your body, and the longer amount of time it takes to recover from that also. And if you want to work out in the morning, it can be an obstacle to it. How do you define the wellness philosophy of your restaurants, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, I'm more happy to jump in. For me, it started with myself. Being in this industry for, almost 3 decades at this point, I was broken mentally. I was broken physically. I was broken internally. Like I couldn't do it anymore. And I needed to understand why. And as I explored my own timeline and kind of the beginning of this industry and the middle and where I'm at currently, I realized that wasn't a priority, was wellness. It was about learning, education, show up, put in your hours, repetition, consistency. That was the constant focus. And, if I'm getting to that point as the owner, as the chef, then how does my staff feel? And also, what kind of example am I setting for the next generation?
I think our biggest focus is on schedule flexibility as much as possible. I mean, of course, that can be challenging within the restaurant industry where we have shifts, right, that we have to do. But I've found, both of our restaurants have lunch and dinner shifts, and that really helps. It allows for day shifts and night shifts. There are people who want the night shifts because they want, what comes along with that. It works better with their schedule. And there are people that want the day shifts. And sometimes in people's lives, it switches, like whether or not they need a day shift or a lunch shift. And I think not only just that, but just, we've also layered into that PTO and benefits that support that schedule flexibility of like when life happens, paid time off and sick pay, also bereavement pay we added recently. It's like when life happens, knowing that you're still going to make the paycheck that you were expecting to get, because a lot of hospitality workers, they live paycheck to paycheck. So I think that's a lot of our focus is on how do we give people a time that fits in with their lives as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's an aspect of wellness, not having to worry about your time or your income. Obviously, that's a huge trickle down effect on feeling good in general. Fiore, what about you?
Philosophically, like we think about creating like a safe and joyful space for our employees, safe in establishing what the rules are, and providing and being steadfast in our support of whatever those rules are, one, so that everybody that works here can trust us and can trust that we are the stewards of everything that happens within these walls. And then the joyful piece is leaving room for interpersonal connection. We have several sort of breakouts and sit downs across the day, but before we're in service, where we have an opportunity to talk, connect, some as a group, some one-on-one. We have, and so a lot of that is organized where, like, I have one-on-ones, like basically I have three a week, so sit down with every employee one-on-one every few weeks, even if for 5 minutes, just to catch a breather, catch a break, and just like catch up on things aside from the more formal sit downs. And it's really about, as in those meetings, in those talks, is ascertaining what do you need? How is I think the schedule piece that Katie brought up is a really important one. Is this the life that you can live right now? Does this job work for you in the hours that you're working, how you're working, the station that you're working? Is this interesting? What's compelling? What's not compelling? And it's really just kind of listening and then taking note and trying to best like help steer the ship for each employee to like the most joyful experience that they can have with us.
I'm making a follow-up note on that. So you mentioned scheduling and Katie, and safety and this kind of structure. What are the key areas where you feel you can best support your employees' wellness?
I mean, I do think, so there's benefits which give the like black and white kind of structure to things that we can offer, which are nice because those are things that you offer and they protect you from, playing favorites, right? That's the reason they're black and white, so that you treat everybody the same. And I think that's really important. However, there are those like kind of, there's other things that you can do. I think the conversations, Fiore, that you were mentioning, just checking in there. I think that the check-ins is where you get those nuggets of inexpensive or free ways to impact someone's wellness that you never expected or knew. I mean, that's where you're going to find out, like, just a little tweak, like, oh my gosh, my in time at 8:30. I mean, we think a lot about schedule, but schedule really does have a lot to do with people's wellness, but they got to drop their kids off. They can never make it on time. They're constantly getting docked because they got to drop their kids at school. Like, whatever their personal life thing is going on, in a conversation, you can learn so much more than a lot of times people are afraid to ask for what they need. And so by asking open-ended questions, you can get that information and try to make it work.
Mm-hmm. What about you, brother? Are there key areas where you feel you can best support your employees' wellness?
You know, I think it's important to really remember that our employees are actually our primary guests. That's the first guest, right? They walk into our home, and that's who we're serving first and foremost. So, you know, I'm constantly thinking, how can I personalize that experience to create a memorable experience? So when I'm thinking like that, it allows me to really go outside the box with how I get that information about that guest, just like I would with something on a reservation. So, you know, one of the things I've actually found is really helpful is I like to take certain team members for a walk. Like, let's get out of the restaurant, let's get out of the kitchen, let's go for a walk, and let's just have a conversation. And it drops such a wall to where I'm actually getting real responses, and I'm getting a comfort that I don't think I could get in the actual business. So it allows me to dig deeper and then think outside the box of what do they actually need. And, you know, you'll come to the realization, well, it's not just about 401k or a holiday or, you know, needing those times off. It's also, I have to go home every day and walk my dog. So, you know, maybe I can help you with a dog walker. And I think that's how we can start really personalizing those experiences to provide better wellness.
I love that. I love you're getting the benefit of the outdoors by taking them out for a walk, right? And then getting out of the environment where you're only thinking about work because you're at work. That's brilliant.
The other thing I wanted to add something to that, Anne. The other thing that's genius about going for a walk is it is so intimidating for people when you're seated at a table facing, you know, it's like you're the boss, they're the employee, you're facing each other directly. It can be really hard and intimidating to open up. But when you walk side by side and you're not having to make eye contact and you're like looking both ahead, it does like open up the conversation. I don't do that enough. You're inspiring me. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, totally. We have a beautiful like park right across the street from the restaurant. We do that sometimes. Not enough though. Definitely not enough. I think it's a really great idea. But I think speaking to the idea of often our employees being intimidated by us when we're sitting face to face, part of one of the ways we try to connect and inspire wellness is in modeling sort of what are the behaviors that we think as healthy behaviors that we'd want repeated, and then, you know, Adam and I hold each other to a really high standard, sort of ethically, you know, in a like a joint moral contract, and like who we are as proprietors here and what we wish to inspire in other people. You know, we can set up all these programs which I'm sure we'll talk about, but what we find sometimes is just okay, here's a mental health program, here's a childcare program we're working on, here, you know, these various programs, and at different junctures we found really low usage rates. And I think a big and important part of it, as Katie was saying, is that people are scared to talk about it or intimidated, or there might be shame around therapy or mental health, and a wall needs to be broken down. So part of what we do, something I do a lot with employees, is modeling and speaking to the intimidation part. It dawned on me a long time ago, 5+ years ago, that I wasn't my 18-year-old self that's talking to these employees, that I'm like a middle-aged person who is their boss, and there's no way that my employees can not see that. And so the one way I try to connect is by being really vulnerable, sharing really vulnerable stories and anecdotes to try to connect with where they might be along the situation that we're dealing with. Or when we're offering a new program, let's say mental health, talking about some of my own therapy history and experiences, and kind of the more that I can bear in a professional way, I have found that it like really helps to connect with some of the employees that kind of need some human connection and assurance that that barrier that they're scared of, that somebody else might be experiencing that as well.
One thing that comes up often when we have these conversations is how do you protect yourself or set some boundaries from that perspective? Because if you become everyone's therapist, which happens a lot in a restaurant setting, that's a huge toll on you potentially. So how do you all deal with that? And how are there boundaries you set? Is it just par for the course of running restaurants? Like, how do you handle this so that your own wellness does not completely disappear when you're being that supportive to your staff?
Yeah, I think it's important to really surround yourself with other individuals who are capable and have received some type of training in talking with team members. And I think Patrick Mulvaney does it really well, to where, you know, they actually have certain people with pins within the team that you can go talk to, in addition to just talking to me as the owner. So being able to set the example with your leaders, I think, is one of the most important pieces, but holding them accountable and giving them the training to represent you in that setting, so you can actually take some of that weight off of your shoulders as well, I think is extremely important.
I also think it's important to know when it's time to refer the conversation, to someone else. And, one benefit that I wish our employees would take, that we need to do a better job of kind of just continuing to promote. It's something we offer. It's and we have a subscription to an EAN, employee assistance, or network employee assistance program, which is free kind of mental health, financial help, like kind of advice on anything that them or anyone in their household happens to be struggling with. And they get, it's like 5 sessions per topic each year. I mean, and then they would then refer them on to someone else. And I think that having something like that is wonderful, because it gives us something very concrete to be able to refer people who are having major issues, and could use more support, so that it's not, I don't want to give advice on a lot of those kinds of levels, but I think we've struggled, to be honest, to get engagement in that program. It's like there and available. So I need to dig a little deeper into why exactly.
Are you comfortable sharing the name of the program you use if you're happy with it?
It's a local, it's called the Employee Assistance Network, EAN. I think if you look up Employee Assistance Network or Employee Assistance Program, an EAN or EAP program, communities offer that for employees. So employers, you should be able to find one in your area.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sure that's useful to a lot of people who are watching this.
It's super affordable. I mean, it's something I wish more people would take advantage of. Both, companies offering, but then also our employees using. So that's education on us, though.
And I think the trickiest part for that, like I've found similarly with a 401k program we implemented last year, 10% of those eligible to get into the program signed up, and I feel like it was a failure on our part to clarify, make clear this is actually free money. This is all you have to do is fill out. I can't fill out the paperwork for you. All you have to do is fill out the paperwork. We will put this money deposited in this bank. There is a financial guidance part of that conversation for each employee, if they wanted to better understand what the program was. We had 3 meetings about it. And I felt like we were really clear. What I find sometimes is this more jumping off of what Katie was saying, and less an answer to your question. And so apologies, but finding the language to connect with our staff where they don't tune us out around things that we're prescribing to them, because I was absolutely prescribing, please come take this money. This is good for you. This helps, even in a very small way, sets up like an adult way to think about your finances, and this is like a building block. So take it up, and to see uh, how underutilized that was within our community, whom I think of as very mature, even for their ages, is surprising, and I think partly speaks to the language barrier of who the message is coming from and what that is, and that the challenge of really connecting those dots.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into benefits, and I mean that is one of the. We'll go backwards before asking you what benefits you offer at your businesses. How do you each deal with that? Because that's something that I think I hear from every chef owner who offers great benefits, has unique packages, really wants to take care of their staff, and there's very little adoption. Sometimes it's a question of like, this is money that's coming out of my paycheck. I'd rather have the full money. I'm 22. I don't need health insurance, these kind of things. Have you found anything that has gotten through to them?
I do have a recommendation or something that we started doing recently that has helped. It's a quarterly total reward statement. You can do it annually, but we do it quarterly because we want to, it helps with retention as well, or we're hoping that it does. But basically at the end of each quarter, we produce a one sheet that has all the pay that the employee received in the quarter. And we have a complicated pay structure with tip sharing and things like that. And so this also lays that out a little bit more clear. It also calculates their average hourly rate because we want them to be able to see when they're tipped what they're actually making on average per hour. And then beyond that, we show all the benefits that they were eligible to be a part of. We show the ones they actually participated in, how many PTO days they might have taken, how much sick time, and what the company contributed. So their 401k, it'll have a 0 if they didn't put anything, and then they're seeing that they didn't get the company match, contribution for not doing that. And so it's a little bit like, hey, these are the dollars in health insurance and 401k and other areas that you are leaving on the table. And it's a quarterly kind of reminder of them. You've only used 2 PTO days or whatever the thing is, so they can see and track their use of their benefits. And I think it's increasing use of them. We also do the other thing that we do is an annual benefits meeting. It's our only required annual meeting. It's in the fall. We pay employees to be there because we require them to be there on a day that our restaurants are closed on a Monday. So one day we make them come in on a day off to do this, but we find that we need their attention and focus to be able to go through the benefits, what we offer and what they mean, and kind of explain them to them.
Mm-hmm. Do you bring experts? Like, do you bring your insurance broker, or do you bring some other people like that to the meeting?
We do. Sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes you should vet how they can explain and speak to, you need to be able to speak in non-insurance speak, right? Like when you're describing how an insurance plan works. So sometimes the insurance broker's there to support, but sometimes coming from an internal person who's not in that world, you can explain it even better.
Yeah. And I like the idea of here's the money you're leaving on the table. I mean, that seems like a pretty powerful argument. Brother and Fiore, is there anything that you do that you found has led to greater adoption?
I think Fiore hit it pretty spot on. The biggest challenge we have, regardless of what we offer, is we can't force them to take us up on mental health services or 401k options or, utilizing their PTO. But I love that we literally just hit what I was going to go with as well, which is we ask from a place of curiosity, what are you leaving on the table, right? This is free money. These are days off that you missed out on that, you could have taken your spouse out, or you could have had a day to go on vacation. I think asking those questions are actually a better way of approaching it. You walk into your staff and say, who wants to retire? And then it opens up the conversation of, well, this is how the 401k works, and this is what the contribution is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Like, what's the long-term element? Not the today, but at some point you're gonna want to have retirement money.
We've had a lot of success with our PTO programs, in that we talk about it all the time. And part of it is in the informal check-ins, in talking about like, what do you have coming up? Are you haven't gone on vacation in this year? You know, you have all this time to accrue. You should really book something. You can do this. Like affirming, sort of offering affirming messages to them individually about taking the time for themselves, and you know, doing that. All of our managers are. It's a constant conversation that our management team is happening with the employees, and it is connected. It is connected in that the staff is definitely using their PTO, and we've formed a nice and responsible relationship with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and PTO doesn't mean you have to go somewhere on vacation. Sometimes it's nice to just enjoy your hometown or something.
Yeah, but I think that the clarifying point is really just that we really have to beat the drum constantly and say, this is for you. You obviously don't have to take it, but if you don't use it, and part of it is like we've made clear in more recent meetings when there wasn't connecting, that if you don't use this is gonna, at some point we thought like a rollover of PTO was more helpful, but we have found that it's actually less helpful. And if we make clear that what the end date is per their own calendar year, each employee's own work calendar from their start date, that if that PTO does not roll over past that year, they're more likely to use it. And so we just keep them apprised of that. I think that quarterly total rewards statement idea is such a good idea in terms of like, I'm really inspired by that, the idea of implementing that into those meetings, just like as a full accounting of that. We do that more informally, but having all the data there, I think, is really empowering.
Yeah, and I think creative usage is so important, right? That when I share with employees how I utilize my PTO as an employee, when I was coming up in my career, that was my opportunity to go stage for somebody. So I would go work for free at another restaurant, but I was getting paid PTO by my employer. And that was how I utilized my time versus just going on a vacation. So I think getting them to think outside the box on utilizing the services is a great way to kind of teach.
Do you all have blackout dates on PTO? I'm thinking, Fiore, if they don't roll over, you don't want to risk having everyone on vacation during the holidays, for example. Do any of you do that? Or it's just
partly that's why we do it on each employee's their own calendar. So
okay,
starting from the day that they started employment with us. So we keep everybody on their own calendar, which is sometimes complicated for accounting, but it helps with organizing their like quarterly and biannual check-in, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's smart versus having everything all at once. Yeah. Katie, do you have any blackout dates?
We do. Yeah. I mean, we do on the big peak moments and of business, and we communicate those early on. And then it doesn't mean that no one can get time off in those times. It just means that it tells them not to plan anything on those dates. And it's more last minute, on who we can accommodate time off and when. So yeah, there are moments in the year when it takes all hands on deck for sure.
Yeah, it's one of the siblings getting married. It's another if you're planning a vacation on your own time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things that we do is during the bigger holidays that we need all hands on deck is we say up front, we have 2 PTO slots available. First to book that receives it, and then none available after that.
That's smart. So you've all mentioned some of the benefits that you offer. Is there anything that you have not mentioned that's also a benefit that you offer? Do you all offer health insurance? PTO?
Yes.
1K?
401k. Yeah.
Yes.
We offer health insurance, but we have a single like primary care physician who is everyone in the restaurant's family doctor. We have a small network in that way.
Mm-hmm. And that works well?
It does. It's a fantastic office, thankfully.
One of the things, you know, in addition to PTO and sick days that we recently added was bereavement time off. So basically, it's a certain number of days paid when there's a death, you know, in your family, and it kind of like lays that out. It also, you know, allows for it allows for days for like miscarriage and some other things. And I think that what's nice about that is it comes outside of PTO and sick days. It's like, you know, they're not having to dip into their PTO or sick days for this kind of catastrophic, unplanned event. And if you think about the cost to the restaurant, there's not a ton that are happening, right? Like this is not something that you're going to have everybody being able to take advantage of all at the same time or even within a year. So it's relatively affordable way of just like layering something on and saying, look, you know, we support you with these extra moments, you know, when you need these moments in life. And it's been very helpful.
Mm. So yeah, it's a good show of humanity. As you said, that not really a lot of extra cost. Brother, is there anything we haven't mentioned that you offer?
No, I think we've hit, you know, the core of it. I mean, Colorado is just one of those states that, you know, a lot of this has been mandated by the state at this point. So we were ahead of the curve with a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of, I think you've all referred to mental health care. So working with that, having services available, that's something that you all also have. Yeah. I mean, it seems like these days. Let's see. How do you balance the cost to you as small business owners? How do you make it work from an economic perspective to offer these benefits? And I know, Katie, at least I know you've done it gradually, for example. So feel free to all mention that too as well, how you've scaled that up. Brother, do you want to go first?
Yeah, for me, I mean, margins are always tight. It's a restaurant, and there's so many variables that are coming at us on a regular basis that, you know, that percent has to be, you know, maximized in every bit. The way I've found that I can be creative in how I generate revenue beyond just my covers and my check average is essentially my presence and my brand. You know, this is me teaching cooking classes, or this is me doing some type of appearance or an event to where I can utilize those funds to go towards, you know, some of the employee services, and almost consider that as, you know, my community give back. If I'm going to donate, you know, this many gift certificates a year, and I'm going to show up and cook at this many nonprofits with portions and time and labor, then what's the difference in me doing that for my staff? And I think that's a unique way of looking at it as an owner, especially as a chef, because we do have a vocational skill that can be applied to actually create revenue.
Mm-hmm.
When we opened, we opened with the idea of trying to offer a holistic environment for our employees, and that we implemented a service charge day one, so it's like a non-tipping environment, and with the idea of finding creative ways to allocate more resources to our employees. At times it's been like an enormous struggle to find extra resources, and we in part started a nonprofit to find and develop and dig our heels on finding more support through local, state, federal government through private partnerships to develop programming to make it more affordable, to find consortium with other hospitality entities to be able to scale programs to make them more affordable. So it's been like working from the macro, from that side of it has been like, I think the most helpful part for us. So we are inspired to do that so that we could afford it, and then you just have to invest. Like every program that we've implemented, we really, really believe in, and we believe it's an investment in the betterment of our staff, of their wellness. And if for every employee that is truly healthy and happy with what they're doing, that is an enormous success. And that is a investment like that will take every day. In terms of its impact on the bottom line, it definitely has an impact. But we're like, we just, our value system, it's more important and kind of employee that we want. It's not. It's for us to figure out.
Is it Fiore's connection or my connection? Okay, it is Fiore's connection. I was suddenly fearing. Your connection became a little unstable for a second, Fiore. I think you might be frozen right now. Katie, what about you? How do you reconcile the economics of it?
Yes, I mean, I think, our first restaurant, Culinary, has been open for 13 years. And so each year, we started early on, like each year adding another benefit. So we did it super gradually, which was really helpful because I think when you're calculating how much a benefit's going to cost, like even just thinking about a matched 401k, for example, you tend to overestimate engagement in like a really big way, and therefore make the assumption that it will be cost prohibitive, or, and this is a little bit challenging, right? So I think if you dip your toe in the water of like offering a benefit that you feel comfortable being able to provide, like a couple of sick days a year or to start, for example, and then you start doing some calculation, like how many of those are actually getting used, because with turnover and things, sometimes people won't use them before they've then moved on to their next position. So I think that's important, is you do it little by little so that you don't capsize the ship trying to do everything for your employees. You could definitely overextend. And knowing that, utilization isn't going to be max. So, even health insurance, trying to get our employees to sign on for health insurance is challenging. We're constantly trying to like make that case or make it more affordable. And yeah, so little by little, and seeing what you can do each year. And then you get more comfortable because you start seeing it. So
right.
So I'm opening my first restaurant tomorrow. What's the number one benefit that I should offer? What's going to make the biggest difference for my employees?
I'm going to put a vote in for sick pay, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, I would add PTO to that. I feel like, but if you're just going to do one, I think sick pay is number one for me.
I would roll in the PTO and sick pay together, but some structured paid time off, I think I would concur is yes. Number one.
Yeah, I think one of the most important pieces that I would give advice wise is you have to create some type of culture that is allowing the team members to voice what they feel in an anonymous manner. Whether that's just with emotion or that's with specific scenarios, but they need to feel like they are heard, and they have to be able to feel like they can voice their opinions in a safe space.
Mm-hmm. And so is that contracting an external service, or is that a box in the restaurant where they can put handwritten notes? How have you handled that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I actually picked off of Patrick in Sacramento was his coin colored temperament, to where, you know, when the employees come in when they clock in, it's kind of saying how they feel. You can program that kind of stuff into your POS to where it's like, okay, the overall consensus of the team today is yellow, so we're good. Or if it's a couple of reds, we've got some stuff to talk about at pre-shift today. It's a good indicator to start the conversations.
It's something when people clock in, they put in, is it a sticker or a bowl or something like that, that's red, green, or yellow?
And, you know, think about it. I mean, when we went through the pandemic, we had to put in temperatures. So why not put in a temperature for your staff before they clock in of how they're feeling mentally versus physically?
Yeah, yeah. And it's good for your floor managers to be aware of that, and everybody to be able to deal with what the mood is. Fiore, did you want to add something?
No, no, but I think that's a really nice idea. That's a really nice idea. And nice to be able to give an opportunity for them to do that upon entry without having to speak, without having to say something out loud. It's another avenue that you might catch something that they might not be able to voice.
So as Anna wrote in the chat, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A box, and we'll pose them to our panelists today. While waiting for a question, I'll ask you one more. How do you measure the success of the benefits that you offer? I mean, there's the clear X number of employees have, but is that a real measure of success? And are there more creative ways that you're each tracking that?
I think engagement's the biggest piece. It's the most sure way to measure a result. You know, we implemented something called Sober Week about 4 years ago that we do every year, and it's a week where, you know, our leadership is completely sober. They make that choice as the example, and then we host early morning activities to discourage staff from going out late and partying and kind of getting into that lost lifestyle. So, you know, the amount of people that show up to that is kind of telling me how my managers, my leaders are communicating, how excited they are, and where the staff's engagement actually is. So I think the results are a big piece, and it's just constantly finding new creative ways to approach it, just like we do with every other problem that comes up in a restaurant. Like, we have to find creative ways to solve.
Mm-hmm.
I love that idea of sober week and all kind of like tackling that together. That is wonderful. We do send out surveys, you know, just to kind of check in, particularly before we're planning benefits for the following year or thinking about ones we might want to roll off. So we're just like constantly looking at engagement, but then asking them which benefits do they enjoy the most, and which ones do they want to see improved or new benefits offered. And then we're looking for consensus. And that really helps, so that you're not just listening to the loudest person in the room, you know, which, you know, you want to offer benefits that are, particularly when you're looking to add new benefits, right? You want to offer things that the most people are going to see as beneficial. So I do think finding a way to survey people is really helpful.
I mean, I think that the largest way for us to track it, and is just looking at trends in overall retention. Really just seeing, because we'll see trends change and try to and then yes, there's conversations with the staff of like what, and surveys about what parts of their employment that they enjoy most here, or do they enjoy the least, what benefits are most helpful for them. But it's interesting that, you know, some staff members might not be engaging with all of it. They might be engaging with the parts that speak most to them, but that the presence of some of the other programs that they're not engaged in still might keep them tethered to us, or make them feel safer, make them want to be working with someone who cares about this particular thing. So sometimes we don't have all the data for we might not be getting engagement with a certain program, but we might have secondary and tertiary benefits for the restaurant just for offering them.
What part do benefits play when people decide to work with you, knowing that now it is very much an employee market? So do they care? Do they ask? Do they pick you because of what you offer?
I think they want to work for good people. I think that's what it comes down to. And I saw we had a question in the chat about, how do you find these types of employers? But I think one of the things that I do just as out of habit, I've been doing for years, is when I have a great candidate who's coming in and I know I'm about to interview, I'll do a surface level search on their social media just to see who they really are, because most of the time you don't hide who you are on some of these platforms and it's public. So why not flip it and do that with the person that you're going to interview with? I think that's a great way to kind of see who you're getting to meet and who you're, look at their LinkedIn, look at their Instagram, look at their Facebook, look at their TikTok. There's a lot of really public information about someone if you really want to know who you're working for.
Fiore or Katie, is that something that people look for when they come and work for you specifically?
Yes. I mean, I think we share our benefits during the interview process. I think upfront, I do think we could do a better job of telling our story for sure, so that people before they interview know the story. We try on our posts and things to include all of this information when we're doing a job listing. So yes, and then during onboarding, we go through it all. I mean, I think that it is our tool of telling who we are and that we care in lots of ways. And to Fiore's point, there are benefits that might not be used that much, but tell a really great story about what's important to us. We were talking about anonymous reporting before, and we added a service called #NotMe. It's actually great. It allows like anonymous texting between your HR or manager and the employees, so that like it's a completely anonymous, but you can the nice thing about that is if you just have like a Dropbox, right? You can't follow up with the person on the outcome of the work that you've been doing, right? You don't know who it is. So, and sometimes you can't make a public announcement about it because there might be a legal issue. But in this case, you're able to actually follow up with the individual after the fact, after the research has been done, after it's been resolved with what the resolution was, and both sides, it's anonymous on their end, the whole process. So, and we don't get that much utilization out of that one, is what I'm saying. However, just having that option there makes people feel good, right? It's like, okay, they care, they want to know, they don't want to hide from anything, and that is important.
Yeah, it's almost it's like a safety valve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have the Q&A box open, but I see we have questions in the chat actually. So are there any known resources for job seekers looking for restaurants that have these approaches and programs for employees?
I think besides looking at job listings, right? Like the details in the job listing, but I do not know of any particular way to sort through employers and find this information.
Locally to us in Austin, the Good Work Austin, the nonprofit we co-founded, you can look through a list of participants at participating restaurants who have signed different pledges about base level participation that we feel are sort of like a baseline of being like a positive employer. So you can look through the list on Good Work Austin if you're here.
And I think one of the most important pieces, besides a job board or some type of resource, is walk into the business and talk to the team members, right? Ask the server, ask the bartender. That you're going to get a more honest answer, especially if it's someone who's a peer, than the marketing that we're putting out to look for good candidates, because I think that can be shaped in any way that we want. So I think it's great to just walk in and talk to the team members.
And then what's the name of that software that allows employees to text with HR anonymously? Katie, if you can repeat that.
#NotMe.
Right. Have any of you hired coaches or provided leadership training for your teams?
Yeah, we do a lot of full staff trainings, and we have specific leadership training across different spectrums, whether some or DEI training for all staff, or for DEI specific for leadership positions. I myself work with a few different coaches and leadership programs and groups that I have found like incredibly beneficial. And so I'm working on formalizing some ways to be able to spread some of those trainings and help co-create some programs in that way that are a little more egalitarian.
Yeah, and training or continuing education for yourself is really key, right? And blocking moments for that also to continue your own leadership development. Can you put links to EAN's quarterly reward notices and all these other benefits you're mentioning? Katie, are there links that you have there, or?
I don't have a link. If you, let's see, I don't know what the best way to get this information to people might be. I mean, I could definitely get a template to you all of like
That'd
what
be
a
great.
quarterly
And we can
reward
then
notice template looks like, and then our EAN provider and some of those other things. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, if that's feasible for you,
Yep.
absolutely. And then to everyone listening, we'll send it as a follow-up. When we send you the recording of the webinar, we'll add this also from Katie.
Great.
Thank you very much. That's very generous of you. Any other questions in the last couple of minutes?
Well, and just to touch on about coaches and training, I think also I bring in a lot of guest chefs and bartenders who, I experience and I enjoy, and I think they can add a lot of value to spending some time with my team. So I love letting the staff getting to experience someone else besides myself, so they can just kind of measure where they're at. They can ask questions. They can get a different perspective. And, sometimes that's great. Sometimes it's like that person probably won't be back in the restaurant. But, you're going to learn from great mentors. You're going to learn from bad mentors. And I think it's important to experience them all.
And when this is a case where if they're experiencing a bad mentor, it is within the safe space of your restaurant, which that's as good a place as any to do that. Thank you so much for all three of you. Even though I don't run a restaurant, I know that I've learned a lot today on ways to improve what I do and take care of myself and my team. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and to model really great and healthy workspaces for everyone in our industry. So thank you for that as well, much beyond the confine of this 1 hour. And I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I plugged again our panelists, and we'll include this in our follow-up so you can check out their socials. And for more resources here, I have some JBF links, and I also linked our virtual education library in the chat. And this session will be uploaded and live in our virtual education library, along with, you can check out other resources and our past recordings from the rest of our Winter Wellness series if you've missed any. So just want to thank our panelists again for being here today. And thank you to everyone for joining us from JBF.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Take care.